Hey guys, Oxy here. Today I'm going to talk about how to optimize your keybinds for Destiny 2. Now the way this is going to work is I'm going to take you through my personal keybinds with this overlay here on screen, and I'm going to explain some sort of general rules that I follow when setting up my keybinds for any kind of game. Now, the end result hopefully should be that you don't have to copy my keybinds. That's not really the point here. The point is that by sort of explaining my logic behind what I choose and giving you the general guidelines, that you'll be able to take those and apply them to any game you play, not even just Destiny 2, and you'll be able to optimize your keybinds on your own for whatever you find comfortable. Because really it's about what works best for you, but there's still a couple of things you can do to make your keybinds better. So to start off, as you can see, movement is on WASD keys, like usual. This is pretty much the standard now in any kind of 3D game on mouse and keyboard. If you're fresh from controller and this is your first time ever seeing any kind of keyboard gameplay, WASD are these three keys here on screen, and they basically mimic the arrow keys. So W is forward, S is backwards, A is left, D is right, etc. And I'm hitting those with my 3 pointer through ring fingers on the left hand. My sprint is on shift. And as you can see, I use hold shift, not toggle. So anytime I'm sprinting, I'm just holding down the shift key. This is also super common. Pretty much any game will have shift as the default, and I just run with that. This is early into setting up keybinds. You can basically sort of choose whatever you want. We have no conflicts so far. Next is my jump, and I do that on spacebar. Also a very common key. And I also have it on scroll wheel, double bound to scroll wheel. And there's a couple of reasons for this. I'll go into some of them later, but one of the main reasons is I use scroll wheel for skating on Warlocks and Titans. And even when I'm not in Destiny, I'm playing other shooters, there's a lot of bunny hop tech in many different shooters that you can use the scroll wheel for. So I'm just very used to having jump on scroll wheel. So far we've been doing good, but now we have all fingers on our left hand occupied. We have shift for pinky, A for strafe, or sorry, A is ring finger. This is W is middle finger, D is pointer finger, and then spacebar is thumb. So all 5 fingers are occupied, and obviously you'd switch to S with your middle finger. But all 5 fingers are occupied, and we still have one more movement key to assign, and that is crouch. Now you'll see there's a couple of different common ones. One of the common ones is control. And it's obviously not my crouch key. And the reason I don't like crouch on control is because it conflicts with my sprint key, which is on shift. And so shift and control I would hit both with the pinky, same finger. And one of the problems with this is that in order to slide in Destiny, you have to crouch while sprinting. So I can't do that if I have it on control. Now I could if I had toggle sprint, but it would still be kind of clunky and awkward. And as a general rule, and here's one of the first rules you guys want to be following, you don't want to assign related actions to the same finger. So sprinting and crouching are related actions because you need to do them at the same time to slide. Therefore, I do not want them to be bound to a key that I have to hit with the same finger. Another common one is C, and I don't use C, although that would fit with my sprint and slide because I hit C with my thumb. As you can see, it's actually my grenade. Now, the reason I don't use C for crouch is because it actually doesn't really matter for Destiny, but in other games that I play, you need to do crouch jumps a lot. So that would be a jump where you hit jump and crouch either simultaneously or almost one after the other. And since I hit C with my thumb, that means I would have to take it off the spacebar. Now, I could use C and the scroll wheel, but it's a little bit more awkward, especially in games with stuff like double jumps, where I don't want to spam the jumps all at once. It becomes a lot harder to do in combat. So C is also off limits because not only do I need to crouch and slide at the same time, I also need to crouch and jump, not necessarily in Destiny, but in other games. So what I settled on is having crouch over here on my thumb button. This is the third option, and it's also pretty common. And with this, I can sprint and crouch at the same time, 2 different fingers. I can jump and crouch at the same time, although again, not necessary in Destiny, but in other games. And it works quite well for me. I can do whatever I need to do without worrying about conflicting finger presses. And all this, by the way, illustrates a second rule that I like to follow, which is to keep your keybinds as similar as possible across all games. So again, I don't need to separate my crouch and my jump in Destiny. There's no situation where that's necessary, but because I need to do that in other games, I choose to do that in Destiny as well, just so that my crouch bind and my jump bind is the same across all shooters that I play. These binds for me in any shooter that I play do not change. Doesn't matter what it is, my basic movement binds are always exactly the same. Obviously, if the game doesn't have a sprint, I might put shift on something else, but anytime a sprint is available, it's on shift. Anytime crouch is available, it's on the thumb button. Now, to round out the basic binds, you have the aim on mouse, obviously, and I keep most of my gun-related stuff, as much of it as I can, on the mouse. So aim is on the mouse, shoot is on the mouse. I have reload on R. That's very common on mouse and keyboard binds, pretty much the standard, and it's fine, you know, it works for me. I don't feel like I need to worry too much about movement while I'm reloading, so it's okay to take my finger off the D key just for half a second to hit that reload. It does create a small micro pattern in my strafe when reloading. I don't know if you noticed, but I tend to hit that reload and immediately strafe to the left. So if I was really trying to min-max my keybinds, I would probably move reload to something else so that I could reload and then strafe in. But it doesn't matter too much to me. It's all right. A little inefficiency here and there is fine because you can't escape it. You have to make sacrifices somewhere. Now, some of you may have noticed, hey, your jump is on scroll wheel. How do you switch weapons? It's a good question. I use the number keys. So 1, kinetic, 2, energy, 3, power weapon. Now, a lot of people who are new to mouse and keyboard, or even people who've been on mouse and keyboard for a while but have gotten used to the scroll wheel, are really intimidated at the thought of using number keys to switch weapons. One of the common complaints is, how do you see the weapons that you're switching? How do you see the keys? And I don't. It's muscle memory at this point. I am just so used to switching keys with the number keys that I can just hit them. I hit 3 with my pointer finger, 1 with my ring finger, and 2 as well with my ring finger. Now, 1 and 2 are sort of related, and I'm using the same finger, so I'm sort of breaking my rule. But for me, there's animation delay whenever you switch a weapon, as you can see. So it's not the same as a movement key. Like, for example, if I'm going back and forth with W and S, you can see there's a tiny little period there where I'm stopping. Whereas with the weapons, I can swap back and forth pretty much at top speed because the weapons have an animation before they're ready to fire. So it doesn't matter as much for the weapons because there's always going to be a weapon swap animation. And even with something like the animation fast cancel, as you can see, I can still do it just fine at top speed. I honestly have plenty of time in between weapon swaps for my finger to reset. So having the same finger for weapon swaps where there's animations involved is totally fine, honestly, as long as your finger is fast enough. Not so much for movement because movement has no restricting animations to it. If I stop, I'm stopped. And then another problem people have with using the number keys is how do you move? Because obviously you have to take your pointer finger and ring finger off the A and D keys in order to switch. And the answer is you can still move fine. You just hold down with your middle finger on the W key and you still have good directional control because you can turn your mouse to direct yourself while you're running. It's not as good as having full WASD control, obviously, but it's fine, honestly. I don't really have any trouble with swapping weapons like this. And again, remember, if you're using scroll wheel, that means you're going to have to take either one finger off the aim or the fire button, or you're going to have 3 fingers on the mouse, which most people do not do. If you do that and it works for you, hey, great for you. But most people don't do that, and so they have to move their finger. One final problem with the scroll wheel is that when you're scrolling to switch weapons, there's a danger that you would scroll too far, because most scroll wheels don't have very hard to find steps. It's just a good way to spam a lot of inputs, which makes it very good for something like skating where you have to spam a lot of inputs. Very bad for something like weapon switching because you can easily scroll past the weapon you wanted, even if you only have 2 weapons to choose from. So like, let's say I didn't have a power weapon, I only have the hand cannon and the sniper. Even using scroll wheel here, there's a potential for me to scroll too far and to like switch past the sniper and end up back on the hand cannon like so. It's like, whoops, I went too far. So that's why I use the 1, 2, 3, 4 number keys, because I know exactly what I'm getting whenever I hit the keyboard without having to worry about scrolling too far, without having to take my hands off the mouse, without even really suffering from movement. And it just works nice. It just works nice once you get used to it. Now I want to talk about my grenade keybind a little bit, because I have it on C, and this actually works quite well for me, because I can use my grenade with sprint, with crouch, if I need to, with full movement. And since it's on C, even though I can't hit spacebar while using grenade, I can use jump on the scroll wheel to go up. Now, jump on the scroll wheel is not really good for, like, if you just want to do a straight glide. You can sort of do it, but again, you run into the same problem as the weapons, because you might scroll too far and cancel your glide or get an inconsistent one. So whenever I'm doing a normal glide, I like to use spacebar. And this is why I have my grenade double bound not only to C, but also to middle mouse. So that's where you click the mouse wheel in instead of scrolling it. And you can see with this, when it's on middle mouse, I have full range of movement because my keyboard is fully freed up. I also have my spacebar for aerial grenades, like the charge grenade on Dawnblade. And none of my movement is interrupted by the grenade. Now there is a little problem here, because if I'm moving and shooting, that means I have to take my finger off the shoot button or off the aim button to throw the grenade. And this is why I have it double bound to C. So I can be shooting, doing my thing, and immediately throw out a grenade. Or, you know, crouch, sliding, boom, 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 still throw out the grenade. Again, I really want to emphasize the importance of double binding actions that are very important to you. Even though there are conflicts with both my grenade and my jump, especially with one another, the fact that I have both of them double bound means I actually never run into problems. Like if I'm already in a glide jump, I can hit this grenade. If I'm already in a skate and I want to throw a normal grenade, I can throw it on C. It works so well because I have backups. Double binding is like having a backup for yourself. All right, I got two more really important keybinds to talk about. The first is my interact key. And as you can see, I actually have it on Alt. Now this is probably a really weird keybind to a lot of you, even those of you who have played PC keyboard and are familiar with keyboard layouts. And usually you'll see it on E. I have my E on melee, and I'll talk about that in a bit maybe. But I like it on Alt. And the reason I like it on Alt is because I hit Alt with my thumb. And what this means is that while I am hitting my interact, I still have full control of my strafe and my gun. Now this is really important because let's say this applies to PvP and PvE in Destiny, because this is super good for revives. Let's say I'm going to get a revive. While I'm reviving, I have full control of my movement and I can shoot back at whoever's trying to stop my revive. If I had this on E or F, which are typically the defaults for interact in games, this would limit my ability to strafe. I could still shoot, I could still sort of strafe, but I would not be able to fully make use of my movement if it was on E or F, because I'd have to take my pointer finger off the D key in order to hit the interact key. By having it here on my thumb, this gives me full control of my movement. And you might be saying, well, what if you have to jump? Well, you're not usually going to be jumping into an interact, but in the event that you are, I have my jump on scroll wheel. So again, proving the usefulness of double binding and giving yourself a backup. Now in a sort of similar vein, class ability in Destiny for me is on V. I think this is actually the default, I don't know for sure, but I have it on V. And in most games, a lot of people put their class ability on their mouse button. Usually on this one here. And it actually, for me, in pretty much every other shooter I play with abilities, this is actually where I put the class ability equivalent. So like, for example, in Apex, that's where I put the tactical. I don't do that in Destiny. Why don't I do that in Destiny? Well, for starters, class abilities in Destiny are all grounded. This means that when you're using a class ability, doesn't matter what class you're on, you are on the ground. There is no way to actually use a class ability mid-air in Destiny 2. There is also no way to use a class ability and then immediately jump because you're locked into the animation. See, I'm hammering the spacebar, I don't jump until I'm done. And that animation, even on something like the Hunter Dodge, is plenty long enough for you to hit the class ability button and then move your thumb back to the spacebar. Now the reason I put it on V instead of on the thumb button, because hey, thumb button still works, there's no problem with it. But I also have the air move on the Warlock class, and that is where the thumb button is used. The reason being, you definitely have to use air move with spacebar. In fact, a lot of the time you want to use it right after you use your spacebar. So in order to do that, I need to use the thumb button in order to keep it clear so that I can use it with my spacebar. And with the thumb button, I can actually use it with either of my jump binds, spacebar or mouse scroll. So it's a very, very flexible bind. And that's why I keep my class ability on V, because it's out of the way. It doesn't matter if it conflicts with my jump, because I'll never do the two at the same time. And actually, that actually incentivizes me to put them in conflicting binds where I hit them with the same finger, because I know I'll never need to use them together, and that frees up space for other binds that I will need to use together. Now, as I just mentioned, I have my melee on E. It's a nice button that's very close and easy for me to hit, so it's very easy to hit in the middle of a fight. I will never ever miss hitting this button in a fight. The one problem with it, obviously, is that it interrupts my side strafe, because I have to take my finger off the D key to hit the E key. But you can actually get around that, because I can keep my pointer finger on the D key if I want to side strafe and hit the E key in order to, with E key with my middle finger, take it off W and hit it with my middle finger. So at that point, I'm only losing the diagonal strafe, which is honestly, it doesn't really matter. Especially in a game like Destiny with melee where it sort of locks on and lunges you forward. It really does not matter that I am losing that tiny little bit of strafing power during, for half a second while I'm locked into a melee lunge animation in the first place anyways. Last but not least, we have just a couple of things. My supers on Q. This is just a habit from my Overwatch days. You can put your super on, honestly, wherever you really feel most comfortable. Some people put it on F. I don't like that because it takes me out of my strafe a little too much. It's easier to hit Q than F to me. And it's not really a huge issue with this. The only potential problem with this is if you put your fingers back on the keyboard wrong and you accidentally hit your super button while you have a super full and you end up wasting your super. But hey, it's not a huge issue. It's not really something that's going to mess with you in combat. And then I have my Control, Z, X, and G keys for my emotes. I move these off the arrow keys because I like to use them sometimes in combat if I need to see around a corner for anything. Even in, like PvE, if you need to chill out and wait for your teammates to respawn in a nightfall or something. This helps just see around corners, and having it closer to my WASD means I don't have to move my hands off the WASD keys in order to get my emote out. So that's going to do it, but I just want to recap some of the basic guidelines that you guys should try and follow. Number one is you want to keep your keybinds the same across games as possible. So if you have a sprint key, should always be on the same key no matter what game. If you have a crouch key, should always be the same. Movement, jump, aim and shoot, you should try and keep all those the same as possible. You should also try and avoid double binding relevant actions to the same finger. So for example, jumping and crouching should not be on the same finger. Sprinting and crouching should not be on the same finger. Sprinting and jumping should not be on the same finger either. Try and separate related actions by finger. And then if that doesn't work, or if you run into problems with that, the best way to get around conflicts is to double bind important and relevant actions. So I double bind my jump because it's very important. I double bind my grenade because it's very important. And that helps me get around a lot of the different conflicts. So as long as you just follow those 3 simple rules when you're setting up your keybinds, you're going to find that your keybinds are going to work a lot better for you. You're probably going to be a lot more comfortable with them, and you're just going to be able to do a lot more related actions very smoothly when you're playing the game. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If it was, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe for more educational Destiny content. And my name is Oxy. I'll see you guys in the next one.